Hello everyone. Welcome to Chimp Talk of the 21st Century. I'm here with Craig Sauvé, and I'm your host, Sam Afshinpour. Dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me on, Sam.
Yeah, so let's try to tell people where we met. We didn't really meet. You were doing a public speech at the University of Concordia, where, like you just told me now, you graduated in 2004, right? And you were giving a speech to one of my political science classes about Projet Montréal, which is the political party that you're involved in that represents the municipalities, right?
That's right. It's Montreal politics. It's municipal politics.
Right. Can you guys level up and become like provincial?
That's true. That's a good idea. Maybe we should consider that. No, right now, it's important for us to clarify a vision for Montreal, promote that vision, try to get people involved in that movement. And it's an election year in Montreal. So we're working on that right now. And as of provincial and federal, there's a lot of different people in our party with different, party affiliations, some without affiliations, but it's a mixed group of progressives, I'd say, for Montreal.
Awesome. Sounds good. So for the viewers or the listeners that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Projet Montréal.
So I'm from Montreal. I was born in the West Island, but I live in St. Henry. Lived in St. Henry. I moved there when I was 17, right after finishing Beaconsfield High School, and I wanted to live in the city. I love the cities. I love the action. I love the nightlife. So I came down here, and I was always sort of interested in politics. I was interested in justice issues. The environment was one of my really big interests since I was a boy. For no reason in particular, except that I was watching the news and reading the news like everybody else, and seeing some of the devastation around the world, reading about climate change. I started getting involved in active politics because I felt it was a good umbrella to address many issues at once, because I didn't have one issue that was dominant. There were so many things that were important to me, fighting racism, economic justice, making the place more livable, making Montreal a better city. And Projet Montréal is a party I joined in 2006. It was born in 2004. It's never been the administration of Montreal, but it's a grassroots, green left initiative. A lot of different activists. Some of them are, cycling activists. Some of them are urban planners. Some of them are social justice activists. Some of them are people that just want to see their neighborhoods look better, And I got involved with them, and I started doing handing out pamphlets, going to meetings, getting more aware of city issues, studying documents the city was putting out. And in 2008, they recruited me to be an organizer for the party, and we only had one elected person in 2008. So they needed some people to help and be willing to work for almost no money. Right. So I worked for about a year and a half for about $25,000 a year before taxes. So it was really hard on my personal finances, but I really wanted to do it because I believe in the movement that's Projet Montréal. And then in 2009, we had a good election. We elected 14 people, so we went from 1 to 14, and Tremblay got reelected that year. We had a big cabinet. We had a lot of staff, and I started working downtown at City Hall with the party. So it was me and another woman who were working for the party before, and then all of a sudden we had a staff of 10 people, come on. So it was exciting. Things were moving. The Orange Wave happened to Quebec in 2011. I was involved with the NDP. So I was very excited about that. I went and worked in Ottawa for a few years in Parliament. And then, I was living in Montreal still while working in Ottawa. I was doing sort of like a weekly commute thing. And I wanted to really be involved in my neighborhood. Again, and I wanted to move back to the municipal world and focus more on that. So I decided to run in 2013, and I got elected. And I represent the lovely district of Saint-Henri, Petite-Bourgogne, Pointe-Saint-Charles, and Griffintown. So 4 distinct neighborhoods in one electoral district. It's probably I think it's the coolest district in Montreal for so many reasons, and happy to be their elected official. And I'm going to election again this year.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, Saint-Henri is actually one of the places that I would like to move into. Like, I'm obviously finishing school, and I'm going to be looking into moving out and really starting a new chapter in my life. So this is like pretty much transition year for me, where I'm going to focus my attention on starting the podcast, launching this successfully. And similarly to you, I also want to see Montreal do better. You know what I mean? You it's more in politics. Me, I just feel like there's a lot of fantastic people in the city, and I want to discover them all. You know what I mean? And I feel like Montreal needs that. You know what I mean? Montreal is filled with like awesome people, but I feel like there's not a lot of people doing what I want to do. There's a lot of people doing podcasts, but they focus on like a certain field. Or like there's some gamers in the West Island that are really popular when it comes to podcasting. The podcast world is growing more and more, there's like almost 500,000 podcasts
Absolutely,
out there. But a lot of people start and they stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then so when I first heard you speak, that was the first time that I heard of Projet Montréal. Yeah, I'm obviously not that into municipal politics, and I don't think a lot of people are, but I don't know. I would be surprised. You're here to shine some light into municipal politics. But the other time that I heard about Projet Montréal is when you guys oppose the amphitheater that's being built at the Parc Jean Drapeau.
Yep.
This is quite concerning for me because, I spend a lot of my time in the summer dancing my ass off there to electronic dance music.
Picnic electronic, yeah.
So
it's a great event.
I think that the listeners that are going to be listening to this that are from Montreal, are going to be mostly millennials. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them spend a lot of time at Parc Jean Drapeau. It's an island that has all kinds of events, Osheaga being one of the biggest. And I had my first Osheaga experience last summer. But what's really something else that's really popular there is Picnic Electronique. Have you heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. I've been.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a huge project, a $75 million project, which $35 million will be invested by the city. Mm-hmm. This is quite concerning. A lot of people are going to be high and they're going to wonder: are they going to be staring at cement at Parc Jean Drapeau, or are they going to be able to stare at trees and plants? Because you guys raised the issue that it was gonna this is how you marketed it. You said it was gonna be a chainsaw massacre when it comes to trees because they're gonna be cutting down 1,000 trees to build this new amphitheater. This is my question: is the issue only environmental?
No, I mean there's a lot of issues, but that's one big part of it.
Right.
We lack green space in the city, and not all of us can afford to go buy a chalet, rent a chalet for the weekend. A lot of families that are struggling, to make ends meet. So somewhere you can get to by the metro and have some nature is really great. I love Osheaga. I love the festivals. Heavy MTL.
Yeah.
I go to them. I'm a big music fan.
You're a big rock guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I read that in your Wikipedia.
Yeah, I used to play in a heavy metal band.
Okay, cool.
But I studied jazz and classical, and I like electronic too. I like everything. So I like the festivals too, but there's Parc Jean Drapeau. We really have to have, I think, a vision that's more englobing what all Montrealers want. So absolutely, I'm all about continuing the festivals there. But we're about to invest an enormous amount of money to mineralize a lot of the park. Mineralize, i.e., put more concrete, put more minerals, take away green space, take away wetlands that already exist there that birds are coming to. So that's definitely an issue for me. But the other side of it is that who's the group that's going to be able to use that space, right? Besides the users of us who buy the tickets, it's probably only one promoter that can afford to do big events there, and that's Evenco. Mm-hmm. So we're basically putting in $33 million so that Evenco can have bigger and better events and sell more tickets. And that's kind of concerning for me. Montreal has some seriously big issues right now. Transport is a total disaster in Montreal, and we really need to put money there. Just in general, green space, housing costs. We should maybe spend more money for social housing, more affordable housing. But we're putting money in the hands basically of a private promoter, if you look at it in the sense that I'm looking at it. And that's a critique I think needs to be heard a little bit more. It's only going to be probably Evenco. It's going to use the space and we're going to pay for it. And so I'm all about continuing the space there. I know the park sometimes could probably be optimized, but we're just not in agreement with this general orientation that we have to cut down so many trees, bring in so much concrete, take away green, and then it's going to be only used for one promoter. And that's the thing. So that's where we had the criticism. And we call it a chainsaw massacre because we wanted to bring attention to how many trees that is. Yeah. 1,000 trees is a lot, particularly in a time you might have heard the emerald ash borer is wreaking havoc on our trees. We have a lot of ash trees in Montreal. Ash are really good for streets because they're good. They can last in the winter. It's like a perfect Montreal typical tree. So Montreal put a lot of ash trees in back in the day, and then we had a lot of beautiful ash trees. But because of climate change, this bug has been coming up to Montreal. It sort of made its debut in North America, and it's destroying the trees. So we're losing a lot of trees in Montreal right now.
Right.
And it's oxygen, and it's beauty, and it's if you want to have kids in a city, you want to have green space. So that's something we have to look at as well.
Right. The mayor Denis Coderre responded to this criticism by Projet Montréal by saying that yes, 1,000 trees are going to be cut off, but they plan on planting 1,000 other seeds around the park. So
We'll see what happens, but there's no clear vision of where the park's going right now.
okay.
And again, this big space is going to be mineralized, and some wetlands are going to be lost, and Dura trees is going to be lost. And it's for one promoter for a few events of the year. And I believe we have to have our green space in the city.
Right.
So I think it's going overboard. I think it's too much. I don't think it's a priority for Montreal. And what I'm starting to feel with Mr. Coderre is that it's a lot of shows, it's a lot of parties, it's a lot of superficial, it's sparkles, it's, these are the kind of things he's promoting. Whereas what we really need is things to help us function as a city. Like I said, transport, housing, these are the things that are super important to help us function as a city.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's a little bit of disturbance going on here. Somebody just entered the room and made a bunch of noise. And
Took
we don't
a chair.
know. Didn't even care that he interrupted the interview. What did he want?
A chair.
He wanted a chair, so he interrupted us. So rude.
Yeah, it was a little rude. That was
very rude. Yeah, so pretty much like I'm starting this podcast, and one of my biggest concerns going into this is the freedom of speech in Canada. Now, I brought you in because you obviously have a lot more experience when it comes to public speaking and expressing yourself online and in the city council. How do we maneuver through the online world without offending people? Like, what are the rules that you use to make sure that you don't offend someone where the public starts hating on you and attacking you?
Okay, maybe you're talking about political correctness. Is that what you're getting?
Yes, yeah. PC and freedom of speech in Canada are like one of my main concerns. I didn't formulate that question properly, but pretty much like, are you concerned about freedom of speech in Canada?
No.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Okay. Because I messaged you and I told you that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what your concerns
okay, no,
are.
because have you heard about the Andrew Potter story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much, he resigned from his position after he wrote an article criticizing Quebec politics.
Yeah.
Pretty much, he called Quebec pathological alienation. Okay, what he trying to mean by that, I wasn't sure. So I asked one of my professors, and my professor told me that what he was trying to say was that Quebecers are being alienated by their own politics. And he used the snowstorm that happened that left I don't know how many people stranded on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
Which I reread the article twice, and I think it was actually somewhat of a weak article because he was trying to correlate that with the fact that Quebec politics are just awful. And then when I looked into it, it sounded more like just bad communication that happened. And I don't think they expected such a big snowstorm. You know what I mean? That's what I think actually happened. But my concern was that this man that expressed his opinion felt like he needed to resign because of all the heat he received. Mm-hmm. Now, this brought up the controversy of the freedom of speech in Canada. A lot of people are saying that it's hard to express your opinion because it almost feels like the expressor are more vulnerable than the people being offended. You know what I mean? I don't think he caused harm. I don't think there was Quebecers that had a hard time sleeping that night because he criticized their politics. So for me, it was a huge issue. I'm like, when I bring in guests here and they want to express their opinions about something, can they criticize something without receiving so much hate and heat online?
Well, he used to be the editor-in-chief, I believe, of the Ottawa Citizen, right?
Right.
So he knows what it's about.
Yeah.
He was fully aware that he was going into this and maybe going to stir things up. And if he didn't, then he probably has no read on Quebec politics whatsoever. Which would be shocking. I think he did. Look, you wanna. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. In the sense that
exactly.
Everybody's free to express themselves without being imprisoned right now, unless it's hate speech, when it's in condoning violence towards certain groups, and I think they should be that should be restricted. I'm very libertarian on speech issues in general, but I think hate speech is definitely a problem. Particularly if it's fomenting violence, but it's not. There are places around the world where journalists are getting killed, imprisoned, that they can't say what they want. In all the continents in the world, pretty much, there is this problem. And that's really concerning. I don't think we're there in Canada. I think the journalists have a tremendous amount of liberty to say what they want. Of course, if you say things that are controversial, now we're in a more global world with communications, so you have to expect criticism. And I knew that when I was jumping in politics, I was going to say things that are probably going to make people angry, and they're going to disagree with me. I'm going to fire, Twitter hate at me or whatever. And I get it, and I understand that, but I knew what I was getting into too. And so everybody's legally free to express their opinions. They may have to expect some repercussions if they're saying things that are controversial, but that's the way the world is now, because we can so freely communicate. Not that I have any respect for trolls. I mean, if you can't put your face and your name on your Twitter account or your Facebook account, the people that criticize me without a face or a name, I take zero legitimacy from. I'm like, this is,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where we are, and I believe that we have freedom of speech in Canada.
Yeah, I agree that we do, but it's just that maybe on the Andrew Potter case, it was maybe like I obviously don't know exactly all the pressure that he had in his workplace to resign, but for me it was almost a little weak to resign after you receive some heat online. Like we don't know exactly everything that was going on in his life.
Yeah.
Obviously, like it sucks to when you turn on your Facebook and you see everybody's attacking you, and I can't imagine what that feels like, and I'm almost trying to prepare myself because I feel like it's inevitable that I'm gonna slip up. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm gonna be recording myself at least an hour a week, and the goal is to publish a podcast once a week, right? So I feel like it's inevitable that I'm gonna make a mistake, but it's just that I wanted to make sure that at least I know the rules of the game before I jump into this. You know what I mean? I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So I read some of the legislation, and obviously hate speech is illegal, and I completely agree with that. I feel like we should protect our minorities, and like people should feel comfortable living here. You know what I mean? And that I completely agree with. Something else that I find is a little vague is defamation. Mm-hmm. Can you like shine some light into that? Because for me, defamation is, let's say I come on the podcast and I start making lies up about a certain person. Is it only lies, or is it like, how does that work?
I don't know, but for sure the more, that we have a public that listens to us as a politician or a podcaster, you could find yourself with 500,000 subscribers one day. Mm. And that means you have a lot of people that are going to, digest what you're saying and what your guests are saying. And so it sort of increases your responsibility a little bit more too, because you have influence all of a sudden, and it can be used for good or nefarious reasons, and so certainly when you have a big audience, when you're podcasting publicly, when you're talking publicly, and you have a big tribune, you have a place from which a lot of people are going to hear you, I think it's just generally good to have a discourse that's respectful, right? So I think we can avoid any defamation problems if you're talking about the issues themselves, Right. Like if you say, oh, that Craig Sauvé is a jackass, he's such a liar, and you're just going on like this all the time.
You're attacking the character instead of what he's saying.
Yeah, but if again, there's a way you can certainly say, well, Craig Sauvé once said this, and then a few weeks later he said this. This seems to be a little bit, hypocritical, and that would be, I think, respectful dialogue. And I'm in a political party. I'm a passionate progressive. Sometimes I get angry, right, but I refuse to be disrespectful ever in public. And I think I don't want to poison the discourse either, Mm-hmm. I want the public discourse to be about the ideas that we're talking about, and about where we want to go as a society, and what kind of priorities we should have. And then sometimes, and we don't need to talk about these things by being disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to put words in somebody's mouth, just flippantly, and you're broadcasting, if you're saying something that somebody said and they didn't say it, well, you have to watch out too, and this is a global word. So hopefully if everybody keeps things respectful, I think things will go better in general. And that's where I think about political correctness too. People are saying, oh, you can't say anything these days, People are just asking for different respectful terms. Right. It's like, I have an Italian background, I have an Irish background, I'm mixed, but everybody call me Craig Sauvé, that the Guido, I'll be like, well, we don't say these words anymore.
They call you Guido?
No, they don't. Okay. I've never been attacked for any my heritage, because it's not clear. But
do you get attacked?
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You do. And like, how do you personally deal with it? Do you just try to not take it personal, or?
Yeah, you have to have thick skin, I think, when you're in public relations or in politics.
Right.
And I try to hear what the person's saying, And if I'm getting a lot of criticism on the same thing, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something I missed here,
Right.
So I try to put a smile on in my head when I'm responding to someone who's criticizing me and say, okay, I just want to clarify what my position is and why I'm saying this. And does that make any more sense? And maybe provide a little bit more background info of what I'm saying. And then sometimes the conversation starts better, you know? Some people are just trolls though, or just like angry or whatever. And you can't control their anger, but I never try to take it personally, you know? I chose to put my name on a ballot. And that means I knew I was going to get attacked. Unless I'm the most perfect politician ever, I'm never going to get attacked. But that's not likely at all.
Yeah, there's no such thing though.
There's no such thing.
Right.
There's for sure I was going to get criticized, and it's going to keep continuing. You know, and there's some things I'm working on these days that get criticized, and that's okay. That's okay. We have to have a discourse,
right.
And if it's respectful discourse, it's going to go better. It's going to go better for everybody, even the opposition. You know, so and we see, you know, sometimes really hateful politics. You know. That transcends and deepens into the people too, and you know our kids are saying that. And then are they going to be disrespectful to their classmates, to their teachers at schools? You know, like Donald Trump, that worries me. This guy has a tone that's just so rude and disrespectful of other people. He objectifies people. He makes things up. I mean, kids see this, and this is the president. You know, almost all kids so they wait. Maybe I could be prime minister or president one day, and they're looking up to this guy. And he's being, you know, anti-woman, xenophobic, hateful. It's tough, man. I think we have to raise the level of discourse, you know?
Right. Yeah. So like, yeah, I was thinking about it. I don't know why I was so concerned about it, because I just felt like a lot of people were getting attacked online. But I guess it's just something you have to deal with. If you're gonna express your opinion, you gotta get ready for people to oppose your opinion as well. You know what I mean?
Getting in the public arena, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Somebody's gonna write some angry stuff on your blog one day or on your podcast with some comments under it. Just take it as best you can. That's my best advice, and try to be positive in your response. Put a smile on your face.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember I received some heat online at one point. I was writing some silly blogs, and then I received some heat, and I felt like really bad for a day or two. But what do you want to say? You want to say something?
A small parenthesis for this question. Basically, one of the worries is, yes, the defamation. The other one is if you have an opinion that is contrary to a listener, and your career is in jeopardy for that, is there any ways to any safeguards in these kind of situations?
What?
I can't think of.
Well, in the case of Andrew Potter, for example, you know, like he got into the arena. He published something in Maclean's magazine, and it was talking about the political culture of an entire province. And there's some nationalism questions going on in Quebec. Some people are very strong nationalists. He was also the spokesperson. Was it at McGill that he worked? He worked at. He was spokesperson there. So he had a role too, a little bit, if you can't just say anything you want all the time, without concerns about people you're affiliated with. You know, if I'm the coach of the Montreal Canadiens and I'm getting involved in, let's say, international politics, you know, I've got to be aware that the whole Canadians are being tagged with what I'm saying. You know, so there's a responsibility when you're a spokesperson, or you have a big role in a big institution or a political party or locally, that you're putting a little bit the name of your institution on the line too, you know. So he must have thought of it earlier. We don't know what happened internally at McGill.
Yeah.
I don't wish any bad things on anybody, but hopefully he thought about it beforehand before he wrote this article. And being an ex-publisher of a major newspaper, hopefully he had a little bit of perspective before he did it. And if because he didn't think about it, well, he kind of made a mistake too, you know. What
was your opinion when you read the article?
Yeah, I read the article.
Yeah, what was going through your mind? Were you like, I read it twice and I realized that it was actually poorly written. Like the correlation that he was trying to make between the snowstorm and how like Quebec is alienating themselves with their politics. There was no direct correlation between those events.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
Yeah, I was like, what?
I thought it was a bit weak and a little bit gratuitous.
And it's funny because he's an editor. Like he should be like, if you're gonna attack, like might as well like done some solid research like to back up what you're saying. I don't know, but I still believe that he should be allowed to express his discontent with the politics.
Absolutely.
And the thing about, I don't know, maybe I'm just hearing rumors online. I obviously don't want to come here and just regurgitate everything that I hear online, but that's probably what I'm going to be doing. But
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Chimp talk of the 21st century. But yeah, so pretty much a lot of people are saying that academia is losing, in a sense that every time you express your opinion, like, you get silenced. You know what I mean? And it was a concern for a lot of people in universities, because if you're not on board with the consensus or the popular opinion, it's like, it's either you're left-wing social liberal or nothing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard for a conservative to be conservative. It almost feels like that way from what I'm reading online. Did you hear about for instance, the Jordan Peterson story?
No, what's the Jordan Peterson story?
Oh, okay, it's a long story. I don't know why I asked you that, because now I have to explain the whole thing. Yeah, I'll try to sum it up, but I'm probably going to butcher it. Okay, so pretty much Jordan Peterson is a professor at the University of Toronto, and there's a legislation that just passed in Ontario. Okay, we're doing a little...
Mike, a little adjust here. I'm listening. It's okay.
Okay, you're listening. So pretty much there's a legislation that passed that gave trans people, transsexual people, or non-binary people new pronouns. So they added like something along the lines of like 75 new pronouns.
Oh, okay.
So instead of being like a he or she, they could be called, I don't know what, like Zer or Z, or pretty much there's people that are sometimes in transition between sex, and they don't want to be called he or she, or they might get offended. So now they made it a legislation that if I'm a transsexual and I'm in transition and I ask you to call me Zer and you refuse to do so, you could get punished by law. And Jordan Peterson is fighting that, because he's saying that this is very dangerous for society, because it's taking away from our freedom of speech. You know what I mean? I was hoping that you knew about that to make me try to understand that better.
No,
but
I haven't read up on it at all.
Okay, that's unfortunate. But anyways, that's Bill C-16, and I highly recommend you look into it. Jordan Peterson is a very well-spoken man, and yeah,
C-16. So it's Canadian law.
Canadian law.
Federal law.
It happened in Ontario though. It only passed in Ontario, but it's not. I don't think it was suggested on a federal level, but I don't think it passed.
Okay.
So they're still like maybe debating it. Maybe it went through the first reading and then it's going to go pass through the second reading or whatever.
Okay.
They're going to debate it. But yeah, there's Bill C-16, and then there's Bill M-103, which is Islamophobia, and I'm completely on board for protecting Muslims, because they're obviously trying to be portrayed as the enemy on media, you know what I mean? And I don't want Muslims that are peacefully practicing their religion to be discriminated against or hated against because of a minority of terrorists around the world. So I'm completely on board with that. But the issue with that law, that bill, is that it becomes difficult for people to criticize like the religion. Now, I don't want to get into this whole topic of religion, but just like one of the examples that I have regarding the freedom of speech in Canada. So yeah, there was Bill C-16, there was Bill M-103. Yeah, it's hard to comment on that without doing a lot of research, so I don't want to get you or myself involved in that, because it's quite the sticky topic.
Well, I can tell you about M-103.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bill, it's a motion.
Oh, right.
And the difference is that it states the will of the House, okay, and the House being the House of Commons.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't bring any change to any legislation. It doesn't change any budget, any budgetary credits anywhere. It's just, so it's saying the will of the House to say that, you know, we want to combat Islamophobia. I don't have the exact text before me.
Right.
But the right wing went off on a tangent that is completely overboard. There's nothing legislation at all in M103. Anytime you see M before a number, it's a motion. It's non-binding. It's just a resolution. Say we say that this, and this is what we say.
Okay, so it's like a principle and not a legislation.
It's zero legislation. And legislation in Canada starts with a C for Commons, House of Commons, or an S for the Senate. Otherwise, you don't see it. And so I saw the Rebel and a lot of people use it, and I think they were using it to get people on their side, to get more supporters, to get more money, to get more votes. There's a conservative leadership race there going on too. And so obviously these guys are trying to compete with the conservative type people in Canada to try to be the next leader and potentially next Prime Minister of Canada. So they're spinning it in such a way as it's dangerous to freedom of speech, but zero dangerous to freedom of speech. It's just condemning Islamophobia. as an expression of the opinion of the House of Commons, which is absolutely something we should condemn. You know, there's always a place to debate different cultures and different religions, and there are times and place, and there's ways to do them respectfully too. But right now there is like this turbocharged atmosphere in Canada and Quebec and all over the world that is completely beyond the pale, oftentimes. And the Muslims are feeling, the ones I speak to in my community are feeling very worried about it, and it's not cool right now. We got to stamp it out before it gets out of hand, because with this kind of turbocharged hate energy, we've seen this in the past in the world. And when a crisis happens, the first people that pay are the people who are on the receiving end of this bad energy. You know, be it the Jews in the 30s in Germany,
The slaves.
be it
now it's the Muslims.
absolutely, and be it the Rohingya in Burma, be it you know the Tutsis in Rwanda, which is, you know, it started to, you know, really badly. I think it was 1993, 94. These atmospheres have to be calmed down. It's a priority. It's an urgent priority, I think, in Canadian and Quebec discourse. So that's where I'm at it. And so hopefully my fellow political leaders are willing to turn it down a little bit and talk respectfully about what their real issues are, about how the society is working, how we're functioning. I think that's where we are. So,
And it's such a strange time. I think it's the first time that everyone is so hyper aware of all the suffering that's going on around the world. And, you know, you look down on your phone and you're just being bombarded of images of suffering. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think like we don't know how to cope with that. You know what I mean? It's the first time ever that we're aware of everything that's going on around the world. Well, almost of everything.
People are more aware and connected than ever, right?
Yeah, but I feel like mental health wise, it's damaging, or to say the least. Like, imagine you look down on your phone and you're just like you feel helpless. You know, there's just too much going on, and you look on your Facebook. I personally follow a bunch of different news outlets just because I'm trying to stay informed about like as many topics as I can. But now I'm starting to feel like it's almost unhealthy, because you almost have to decide, do I want to be informed or keep my sanity? You know what I mean? And how do you deal with that? Because you obviously have to be aware of a lot of things, being a politician and doing a lot of public speaking. Do you have a way of doing a healthy dosage of news?
Yeah, no, I'm a big news reader.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm a news junkie, as they call it. You know, I follow a lot of sites too, and there's a lot of depressing stuff going on out there.
Fuck.
But we gotta. In the end of the day, you know, life is good for a
us,
lot of people.
yeah, at least.
You know, and we gotta see the beauty in the world too. So yeah, it's true for us. We're lucky. We gotta recognize our privilege, I think. And when we're looking at human rights abroad, we have to be well aware of it, I think, in order to be able to do good. If we're not aware of it, we can't do any good, you know? And so the pressure also has to come the bottom up. People have to read about, there's a war in Yemen, there's a war in Ukraine, there's a disastrous war going on in Congo forever. There's a one that started in South Sudan recently. Extremely, extremely problematic. Or like I mentioned, the Rohingya in Myanmar.
Is that in Sudan or is that in Congo?
Sorry?
The one you just
Rohingya?
mentioned? Yeah.
It's a Muslim group in, I believe, I want to say Western Burma.
Okay.
Burma, Myanmar, and they're being persecuted by the government there.
Damn, I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, no, it's extremely serious. People are being butchered. You know, there's this going on around the world. I think we have to be aware of it. I myself, you know, I still, even when I walk down the street, I look at the sky, it looks beautiful, and I can get, you know, pump myself up and say, well, at least, you know, there's some good things in the world too. You know, there's music, there's culture, there's people. Yeah. But it's true that it's tough, eh?
It's tough.
And it would be interesting to see like a study of how social media affects our you know, state of mind and how it makes us feel. That would be really interesting.
I don't think it's like 100% healthy. I think that everybody should think about having a social network or social media diet. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
And like just sign out for like a couple of months at a time, because you look down on your Instagram. I personally look down on my Instagram, and everybody has a picture of, hey, look at my life is so much better than yours. Or hey, I'm beautiful. Or hey, look at me, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then you have like the fear of missing out that's going on in your mind. Well, yeah, at least in my mind.
And well, I think we all feel it too.
Yeah,
I definitely
like what the
too.
hell? And then I turn on Facebook and it's just like, just getting bombarded of information of all the nasty things going on around the world, and I don't think it's 100% healthy. So that's why I think it's really important to try to take a diet at least.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
As a public figure, I can't. I have to be
exactly.
there.
You just
I like to
have
communicate
stay informed.
with the public about issues that they're facing in the neighborhoods. But yeah, no, it is tough, and I wonder if humans are more apt to share bad news because it's shocking and juicy, or I don't know. But it seems like there's more bad news clearly shared.
Well,
because lots of good things are also happening in the world that we can celebrate.
Exactly.
Human achievement, beautiful goings on in nature, even a nice sports moment or a good joke. There's always something good going on too. So if we can maybe.
Yeah, speaking of humor, memes are hilarious. I love memes. But yeah, to answer your concern about it seems that there's only bad news, because the thing about news outlets, they have no choice. If they want to have good numbers, the more it bleeds, the more it leads, is the saying. You know what I mean? It's the saying. So you have to share about the war, about like all the bad things that are going on. It gets more clicks. You know what I mean? Like when you're scrolling down your Facebook, it's rare to click on the article that says about a genius 13-year-old boy who just came up with some sort of invention or scientific invention. You know what I mean? You'll okay, I gotta stop saying you know what I mean.
Just go ahead.
One of my friends,
say it, man. Do it.
One of my friends was like, I listened to your podcast and episode 2, and he's like, you need to stop saying you know what I mean. And I feel like I said it 5 times.
We all have verbal tics. So.
Okay, and something else I wanted to try to eliminate is my ums. Like.
Yeah, I say like a lot.
Yeah, and I say me, I.
Oh,
You're just supposed to say I, but everyone
That's a Montreal thing, eh?
It is, eh?
The me, I thing. I don't know. It's the French, I guess, and then the Anglophones took it. Different cultures moving into Montreal.
Everyone's bilingual.
Moi, je vais toujours à la bibliothèque. It's just normal to say it in French, right? So I think we picked it up in English somehow.
Are you better in French or English?
I'm an Anglophone. So
Like
I'm better in
perfectly
English. Yeah.
Better in English? Okay, yeah. Because I saw it, like I follow you on Facebook, and your posts are in French or half French.
Yeah, most are bilingual.
Right.
Sometimes I'll shoot a French one out, sometimes an English one, sometimes bilingual, depending on the audience too and how I'm feeling that day. I like to be authentic. So if I feel like writing in English, I write in English. If I feel like writing in French, I write in French.
When I invited you, is there like any topic that's on the top of your mind that you would like to speak about rather?
Well, maybe the one I thought of is it's an election year. And
November, right?
November 5th, yeah.
November 5th.
And so all of Quebec goes to election at the same time for municipalities. 1,100 municipalities across Quebec. And it's so important that people go to vote and that people get involved, because cities have a fundamental importance of how the economy is going to grow, people's security, financial security and physical security, the environment. It's a place where so much action can be taken and is direct, concrete, with the citizens in the neighborhoods action, And so I would say in passing, I hope that your listeners pay attention, get involved, go vote. My party is a grassroots party. I'd love to have people come and work with us, get some experience learning about municipal politics. And it's not just garbage cleanup,
Yeah.
Urban planning is a huge thing, right? Urban planning is how the city is going to transform itself and how we're going to give us priorities for our city. Are the priorities of our urban planning designs that we're going to do, is it to make more affordable housing? Is it to make room for families? Is it to be more environmentally friendly? Is it to be more efficient for transport? Or is it just, free market, whomever makes the money first, let them go? There's different orientations you can take there, and it's super important. In Montreal, we're going to face a housing crisis, which is already a crisis in so many ways, but it's going to be vastly exacerbated if we don't do anything about it now. There are 22,000 people on the list for social housing in Montreal. 22,000.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And those are the people that made it out. They decided, okay, I'm going to go on the list. People that need a hand, that can't pay their rents the way they are, and they can't afford to buy. And we build the last 2 years, we build about 650 units a year, which is nothing.
Yeah.
So the list is growing, and the units are not catching up at all. It's going worse.
So those 22,000 people, they don't have a home?
Or they're living in very, they probably have some abode, maybe not, or they're living in very precarious circumstances.
Or on a couch or something.
Two families to an apartment. They're just overcrowded at home, or living in really bad there's a lot of salubrité is the word I'm looking for. Cleanliness issues, like in bed bugs and these. If you're living with bed bugs in your unit, in your apartment unit, your whole life is to overtone because you can't. It's terrifying, right? It's terrible. These things. They're so hard to get away, and everything. Your whole life is down the tubes if this kind of things are happening to you. But these are big, real problems. Or you're living with moss. You can get sick. You can get respiratory illnesses if there's too much mold and stuff. Not moss, mold.
Yeah.
So these are issues that the municipalities are facing and have to deal with. And the current administration, Mr. Coder, I don't like his orientations. I feel that they're too much, like I said a little bit before, too much superficial parties. He likes to make headlines, but the real issues, he's not tackling them.
Right.
The metro, you guys take the metro maybe, the orange line, the green line, it is at capacity at rush hour. You can't fit much more. And they can't fit much more trains on the rails either because they're going at a minute and a half already. They need a little bit of space between each train. What are we going to do about it? There's no plan. There's no plan.
So there's no plan. There's no good news when it comes to transportation in Montreal. I know that's your focus.
Yeah. The people talk about the electric train.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That could bring some positives and some negatives. I'm very worried about it because it's finally we get some investment in public transit. Finally, some big investment. Waiting for a long time. Montreal's lagging behind all the metropoli around the world that are really advancing. Montreal's just dragging its feet. It's embarrassing. Okay, and they get this one and they make it a private project that's not even done publicly, and the private project is for profit, and they're gonna all the orientations that will follow from the fact that they have to make money on the thing is making it a less efficient train, and it's actually making it take a different route. That's going to block further projects and block things we've already invested in the public sector. So it's actually, I believe, an ill-conceived project. It's a bit of a boondoggle. It may help on certain issues, like finally we'll have train light rail to the airport. Finally, it's embarrassing that we don't, as a major metropoli that we are with a big international airport. There's even a train station built in the airport when it was built to try to accommodate one. But it's doing this roundabout, around up through the mountain, down through Saint Laurent. That's just because they want to make money from future tariffs. And what are the tariffs going to be? We don't necessarily know. They've been way less than transparent about how it's going to work. So that's the only good news is kind of bad news at the same time, which sucks.
Right. It's
so frustrating. So most transport people are very wary about this project and worried about it. But it's because the other levels of government are just so blasé on transport issues. They're no good at it. Like this Liberal government is terrible on transport issues. And it's bad. It's for quality of life, to not be in traffic all the time and not being in a sardine can of a metro. And the economy in Montreal pays an enormous amount because of all the traffic jams. They say it costs up to, I've heard figures between $1.5 and $3 billion a year in economic losses because of the traffic jams. And even the train itself is not going to solve that. So we really have to step up our game on that. And the municipality is the one that's going to be the driving force in making a change. So these elections coming up, people have to get involved. They have to get informed. They have to go vote. People don't vote at municipal levels. Not just garbage pickup. It's urban planning. It's housing. It's the economy. It's transport. It's bike paths. It's you name it. It's parks. It's public security. If we have issues with the police, there's some corruption issues going on. Well, not corruption issues, but there's a scandal going on in the police with various factions that may be having false investigations against one another or maybe spying on journalists. This is going on. Well, the only person that the chief of police listens to is the mayor of Montreal. So maybe it's time we need a new mayor. That's the way I'm looking at it. So with a progressive view on policing, a police that's going to be more focused on community development and, community security rather than a police that's just going to be there to try to get more, traffic tickets, right? And to try to make more money. It depends. There's some good people in the police that they're not given work that's very validating for them.
Right. And what are some of the solutions that Projet Montréal has in plan? Let's say you were about to get a significant amount for the transport budget. What are some of the options?
Well, we're going to put together, we're working on it already, a transport plan for Montreal, a better vision of where we're going. So I'm not going to divulge where we're on that because it's top secret stuff.
Oh, it is?
Because this election year,
Can you give us an inside scoop? Or?
I can't give any scoop. I would love to help you out, Sam. I really would.
It's all good.
But no, it's a big deal. So we're working on that. And we've done every election, so I'm sure they see it coming. And they're probably the other party is too. But in terms of tools, we have different types of tools. We have to find a problem for the metros.
Yeah.
We have to have buses running on time. And we have to, the STM was cut under the Coder administration, and they got so much public pressure that put money back, but we lost years of planning, years of development. So, we're going to have a very comprehensive mobility plan for, pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, metro users, bus users, car to go and communautaire users, everything. We're going to talk about the whole thing, and we got to get Montreal moving. We need a solid voice on this, and the mayor has been not super effective on this.
Is it going to be a re-election for him also in November?
Yeah, all the municipalities, all the voting is in one shot. In Montreal, you have a number of ballots you receive when you go to the ballot box because you vote directly for the mayor. Whereas in federal or provincial, you vote for the house
representative,
and then the leader of the house the leader of the party with the most seats gets to be the chief executive officer, if you will, the prime minister or the premier. In Montreal, it's not. You vote directly for the mayor.
Right.
And then you vote for your borough mayor, and then your city councillor, and then borough councillor if you have a borough councillor.
Okay, so let me try to understand this. Is Valérie Plante going to be running for mayor?
Yep.
Okay.
She's running against Denis Coderre.
Right, okay.
So those are the two main candidates that have emerged so far.
Okay, what are the biggest parties when it comes to municipals? I'm just not aware.
No, it's fair enough. I'm happy to talk about it, really, because I think it's a great year for you to be talking about it, too, with the election year. It's going to be exciting. If in the federal and provincial scenes, the parties are a little more established and they have history. And in municipal, they tend not to be that long living, right? Long lasting. Our party is the oldest party in City Hall, and it's 2004. And the only reason because it's a movement that's based on ideas and it's a grassroots. And it's not based around one figure. So we're called Projet Montréal, and the other party is Équipe Denis Coderre. So insofar as Denis Coderre is not there, the party will cease to exist, right?
Right.
Because it's named after him, even. It's about him.
So narcissistic of him.
I always said it's very humble of him to name the party after him. But so that's the way it works for his party. And so those are the two main parties right now. Équipe Denis Coderre, they have a little over the majority of city council. And we have 26 elected officials in 11 boroughs. There's 19 boroughs. And then there's some smaller parties. There was Mélanie Joly's party. She did really well against Denis Coderre. She came second. She was 26%, he was 32%, but she didn't elect a lot of councillors because they didn't really build the roots. They didn't have roots. It was like a one-shot deal, but she managed to get a few in anyway. So they have 3 seats at City Hall right now.
And how many seats in the City Hall?
There's 65.
65
so
seats.
3. We have in City Hall. We have 17, 25 because we have some borough councils that don't sit at City Hall too.
How many does Projet Montréal have?
25.
25?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the City Council we have 17. Because the thing is, there's some elected officials that don't go to city council. It's confusing in Montreal.
Yeah, it's quite
like
confusing.
I explained.
I'm a poli-sci student and I have no idea. I was like, what are you talking about?
It's fascinating though. Each borough has its own council, right? So there's one in the Plateau.
Okay.
There's one in Rosemont. I'm in the Sud-Ouest.
Right.
There's one in Pierrefonds.
So when you have a meeting or a council, all the parties come to your council and you guys talk, or how does that work?
It's like Parliament.
Right.
But in the boroughs, they're small. They're like 5 or 6 people around the table, right?
Okay.
Because that's how many elected officials. And in City Hall, there's 65. It's like Parliament. There's a Speaker of the House. There's motions put forward.
Do you go to the City Hall?
Yeah,
one?
I go to City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some elected officials that only sit in their boroughs. Right. That's why there's 103 elected positions in Montreal, but only 65 of the 103 go to City Hall. The rest are only local boroughs councillors.
Okay,
so they just only deal within their neighborhoods.
Right.
Whereas people like that are city councillors and mayors of their boroughs or the mayor, we vote on trans-Montreal things, pan-Montreal things like public security and transport. So,
okay, I see.
Where was I going with that? Well, who are the parties, right? So you have Projet Montréal with 26 elected officials. You have Denis Coderre's party probably has around 45, 46, I think. Mélanie Joly's party is called Vrai Changement. They have 3 in city council, and they have a few more in their boroughs.
So you guys are the second biggest?
We're the second biggest.
Okay,
We're the official opposition.
Okay.
So the other parties are kind of small. So Mélanie Joly's party, now there's 7. It's kind of small, and 3 in City Hall. And it's only in 2 boroughs in the West Island. Oh, no, they have 1 person downtown. And then there's the Coalition Montréal, which has 2 seats only. And then there are borough-only parties that say, like, why do I care about Montreal? I'm just going to run my borough, and that's it. People do that, right? So they have one party that's called, Parti Pro Action La Salle, and they have 7 people elected,
Right.
6 people, and 2 of them sit at city council.
Okay.
And then there's Équipe Anjou, that's just for Anjou, but they have 2 people to go to city council as well, but they have another 2 in their borough. So there's all these mini parties too, but there's 2 main contenders, and for the moment anyway, and it's Équipe Coder and Projet Montréal.
Okay.
We're the 2 big ones, and we're gonna have a full slate of candidates across the island. Campaign posters, ads, like the whole lot. It'll be a big campaign.
I remember when you did a presentation at one of my classes, you showed us a map of Montreal and all the separate boroughs, and there were some certain boroughs that weren't part of Montreal.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, Pointe Claire was one of them, and that's where I come from. Do the elected officials, can I call them that, elected officials, go to the city council of Pointe Claire?
Yeah.
Okay, they do.
So, if you're Pointe Claire is what they call a reconstituted city. It's a reconstituted city. It was forcefully merged into Montreal, if you remember.
Okay.
And then they had a referendum, and then they chose to leave Montreal.
Yeah.
But the way the province organized it, they said you can't 100% leave everything Montreal does, because waterworks go together, your public security, your fire, major roads between cities.
Yeah, you can't do everything by yourself. Like
Pointe Claire could not do. Yeah. Maybe they could. Who knows? There's a big argument about that. But suffice to say, none of the Pointe Claire officials sit at city council. But we created this other big thing called the agglomeration council.
Okay.
Which is pretty much it's not really democratic. It's kind of a joke actually. But the mayors of the reconstituted cities, they go to Agglo Council, but they all lose every vote automatically because Montreal has on this council 87% of the weight. So it's kind of not it's not a real council.
Okay,
it's not real.
So you tell me they don't go to the city council, or they do?
They go to this Agglo Council thing, and it sits in the city council chambers.
Okay, it's quite complex and confusing. I feel like it shouldn't be so confusing.
I know.
Like,
but
why is it not more simple?
It is because of the big argument we had when we merged in '98, and then when we had the referenda to demerge, we had to put in new measures to make sure there was local democracy, that the newly merged cities, like Verdun is now part of Montreal, used to be a city of Verdun.
Damn.
They feel that the people in Verdun feel good being in Montreal. This was important, this is all part of it. So they really created these structures to try to permit local democracy to exist. So it made it confusing. So if you think of anything that really is pan-Montreal, city council is in charge with the Agglo. Okay. And if you're in Pointe Claire, you have local council representatives in your neighborhoods too. Okay. So they probably have really small districts for about maybe 2,000 voters, whereas my district's 42,000 voters. Their district probably around 2,000. So you have local councillors in Pointe Claire, and they have a local council there. I think it sits by John Rennie High School there.
Okay.
That's where the city hall is.
Yeah, maybe I should get more involved.
Hey, maybe you should run, Sam.
Yeah, maybe. No, I probably wouldn't run. But I don't know. We'll see in the future what I feel like doing. But for now, super focused on the podcast, and
that's good.
Yeah, trying to make this happen.
We need young blood in all the councils in Quebec. We need people with new ideas, because most of them are just people that this is a lot of people that are more elderly sometimes, and that have been doing it for a long time, and maybe been councillors for a long time, and we need them too. It's not just, but we need young blood in there for sure.
Speaking of young blood, who's that liberal girl that won her? Did she win her district and she represents the Liberals? Yeah, in Ville Saint Laurent.
Yeah.
So how does that work? She represents her borough now.
She represents her federal riding, which is Saint Laurent Cartierville.
Okay.
So the federal riding, that's how the federal system works. In the provincial system, it's like the British system.
Okay.
You vote for your local representative, and then they go off and sit for you in the House of Commons. And
so she's gonna be sitting in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so sick. But to me, it's like, why did she just recently get elected when election year was a while ago? Like when did Trudeau came into office? It was
2015.
2015. Yeah. You would think that representatives would be picked around that time. Like, why?
There was Stéphane Dion won the seat.
Okay, and then how
he
come?
Resigned.
Oh, okay, that's why she got elected.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what happened.
There were 4. They're called by-elections. An election that's not in a year, and there's a legal amount of time that a constituency is allowed to have no representative. So if you resign, you can resign, or you can maybe fall ill, or worse, you know. So there's a mechanism to make sure there's always a representation for the constituency.
Right.
And
she's my age. She's like 26.
Yeah.
That's super young.
It's good to get more young people in politics. It's a good thing. Hopefully she'll bring some fresh ideas in that party.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna start wrapping this up. I want to finish on more of a personal note. So is there any life lesson that you learned, or some sort of epiphany, or I don't know, something that you learned as of recently that you would like to share with us?
Well, that's a big question, eh? Somehow.
Yeah, I know.
What's the biggest life lesson you can leave us with right now?
No, I don't know.
Coaching and drive?
Okay. How about this? Something that you recently, a new idea that you recently subscribed to that you weren't doing before.
A new idea that I recently subscribed to.
Like some new sort of revelation, or something that's an aha moment, or.
Well, look. Maybe I'll go more general.
Okay, you can do that if you want.
I think we gotta chill out, and we have to be calm, and we have to try to understand where somebody else is coming from, if they want to talk, if you're having a conversation. And like I said, the hypercharged atmosphere of xenophobia that worries me very much, and people are getting really, really angry from all over the place. I think we have to try to lower our blood pressure and talk calmly, and try to understand where everybody else is coming from, and maybe what people's fears are, you know, to try to assuage xenophobia and see what all the good things that we are as a society, and promote those to try to create social cohesion. That's one of my obsessions recently, is like finding ways to convince people through positive messaging that xenophobia is a completely wrong-headed approach. And so recently there was a vandalism at a mosque in Pointe Saint Charles, the same week that there was that massacre in Quebec City in Saint Foy. 6 people died, 19 people injured. The Muslim community across Canada traumatized. I spoke to many people in the Muslim community in my neighborhood. They were extremely worried about it. They were extremely upset. I was upset too. I'm not from the community. I think Quebec was traumatized, in fact. Yeah. Same week there's a vandalism in a mosque. Imagine who would do this as a thing, you know? In Pointe Saint Charles. And the community right away, we reacted. I went down to the mosque immediately when I heard that. I spoke to the people, the parishioners that were there. They were very serene about the whole matter, in fact. They said, we were used to this kind of crap. And I'm like, really? Come on, guys. This is crazy, you know? But I was impressed. I was really impressed with their calm. And I spoke to the imam and the organizer, and we spoke to some other people in the community. We said, we're going to hold a vigil the next day.
What's a vigil? A
vigil, a place where we're all going to assemble and say, show the love, basically.
Okay, I see.
Sometimes you do it when something bad happens. And,
right.
And it was the Thursday morning that the brick went through the window of the mosque.
Actually, I went to a vigil. I don't know why I completely forgot what it was.
It's okay.
But anyways.
So they're good, I think, moments. So Thursday night, Thursday morning, the brick goes through the window of the mosque. Friday prayers the next day. We organized a vigil for next day. Hundreds of people from the Point came out. And they came out to support the mosque. People that don't go to the mosque. People that have never been in the mosque in their lives. And the mosque opened the doors, and there was like, when they offered, coffee and tea and like cookies, and it was like an amazing day, and like all this positive energy was created for something so negative. Right. So one of my thing is, that's really what I'm trying to do, is to find a way we can reframe the arguments around the xenophobia problem. So if somebody says something what I find is clearly racist, maybe the best approach for me, if I want to convince them not to be racist, is not just to point a finger and call them a racist.
Right.
Sometimes that works on certain people that might go, they might get a little nervous, But some people are like, hey man, screw you, mind your own business. Like as soon as you attack somebody, they dig their heels in, right, and they're in like fighting mode, right?
Right.
So I was thinking about that before the vigil, because I know there's going to be media, and I know there's going to be a megaphone. I know there's a good chance somebody's going to ask me to speak. So I said, I'm going to put all the accent on how amazing the Point is, and how this is the real point. The real point being all the people that come to support somebody who was down, that got a little bit of sand kicked in their face. And I tried to push the ideas of all the positive things that the Point means to people, because people have a big identity with the Point. People really, they love the legends of the Point. They love the past of the Point. So the Point was a working class neighborhood. So I say, the Point was a neighborhood that we all used to always help each other out. People down on luck, we took care of the little guy. We fought with the little guy. We were solidarity is something that's important to the Point. I was mentioning all these positive parts of what the Point St. Charles meant to people. And so people who are very proud of being from the Point, they might be less. They'd be more hesitant to be homophobic or racist, xenophobic if they realize that a real Point St. Charles person is someone who's generous, that is hospitable, that is going to take care of the little guy when they're down and out, that's going to look after their neighbor. So using positive reframing to try to win the xenophobia arguments and try to convince people that it's completely false and wrong-headed. So maybe that's my little life lesson, because it's recent that I started operating with this moral reframing, and I think it'd be useful for the progressive movement in general, and people fighting racism or hate or misogyny or what be it what, to try to focus on what makes us great as individuals and communities, and try to use that to convince people that, this hate is unfounded and illegitimate in our society.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I find that Montreal has been great at being welcoming and just loving and accepting of everyone. And throughout my personal experience in Montreal, living in Montreal my whole life, and living in Quebec my whole life, I never really felt any sting of racism. But it was only after the Trump got elected that I started to feel like, okay, maybe I was hoping that it wouldn't spill over into our border. Sorry, I can't speak. But
it's late Sunday.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was hoping that it wouldn't cross the border. But yeah, like you said, he inspired a very, very minority of people to express their racism. You know what I mean? But I feel like Montreal is stronger than that. I think there's more people that are accepting, welcoming, and loving. I always feel like there's more good than there is bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we gotta use, I think, our tribunes and our public space to try to bolster those positive sides. Right.
Right.
We're a hospitable people. We're a loving people. We're a caring people. We look after our neighbor. Solidarity is what Montreal is about. That'll convince people, I think.
Okay, yeah. Before I wrap this up, tell us something that you're grateful for as of recently. I have all these deep life questions.
I like this, man. Let's do
like
this.
Okay.
Let's philosophize. I'm grateful for my friends, my family, and just so many good people around me that I'm inspired constantly every day, and it's just wonderful.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this, man. It means a lot to me that you took time out of your schedule and you came to talk to me. So
thank you. I'm grateful for you inviting me too, man.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. That was Chimp Talk of the 21st Century. Oh, yeah, before I wrap it up completely, where could people contact you if they want to get involved or ask you questions?
Sure. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram.
At Craig Sauvé?
Yeah, it's at Craig Sauvé.
Craig with a C?
Yeah, CRAIG SAUVE. We have a website too, projetmontreal.org. There's a lot of English content as well. We're trying to be as bilingual as possible. There's volunteer forms there. There's donation forms. But, if anybody wants to get in contact and chat with me or whatever, I will always help somebody get involved in progressive politics and to help out the community. I'll do whatever I can to make sure they find their créneau, their place where they're going to be most comfortable and happy to help.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for doing this. And that was Chimp Talk of the 21st Century. And we're signing out. Thank you for listening.